Patrick Cockburn, The Age of Jihad, Islamic State and the Great War for the Middle East. In The Age of Jihad, Islamic State and the Great War for the Middle East, Patrick Cockburn takes an in-depth look at the history and events leading to the rise of ISIS and the ongoing turmoil in the Middle East. Exploring decisions such as the U.S. invasion of Iraq in 2003, the consequences of the Arab Spring, and the complexities of regional politics, Cockburn presents a sobering overview of the current state of affairs in the region. Readers can expect to gain insights into the failure of Western policy and the roots of violence in the Middle East.
Afghanistan, a fragile peace. After the tragic events of 9/11, the United States focused on retreating Arab enemies in northeast Afghanistan. In a 4-year civil war that led up to Taliban rule in 1996, Kabul suffered the loss of 100,000 lives. With the help of the United States air support, the Northern Alliance managed to overthrow the Taliban government in 2001. The Northern Alliance was a group of politically skilled but militarily weak anti-Taliban warlords. Afghanistan finally seemed to offer a secure future to its people. The unforeseen consequences of the invasion of Iraq. The decision of the U.S. to invade Iraq in 2003 led to dire consequences that were not anticipated by U.S. policymakers. A misreading of Baathists, who were mostly trained bureaucrats without strong Saddam Hussein loyalties, contributed to the poor outcome of the war. In addition, the effect of UN sanctions on Iraq following Saddam's invasion of Kuwait in 1990 was underestimated. The sanctions led to a collapse of the country's infrastructure, with health services and electricity functioning in only limited amounts. The invasion led to organized resistance and violence, with suicide bombings, looting, and significant damage to U.S. soldiers. The outcome of the U.S.-led invasion undid the previously stable relationships among Kurds, Sunnis, and Shia. Ultimately, the invasion of Iraq resulted in a widespread breakdown of security in conflicts that engulfed the Middle East and North Africa. The complexities of the Iraq War. The Iraq War was plagued by sectarian violence and a lack of understanding by American leaders. The bombing of the Shia Golden Mosque in Samarra was a clear manifestation of a long-standing sectarian conflict. Many of the jobless Sunnis who struggled against their Shia neighbors were dismissed as part of the opposition. The U.S. surge, which involved 30,000 additional soldiers, was considered a success, and talk of a gradual withdrawal began. However, negotiations for a comprehensive security agreement between the U.S. and Iraq were unsuccessful, and Iran began to fill the power vacuum left behind. Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki, a Shia, even removed hundreds of Sunni candidates from the ballot ahead of legislative elections. The war had lasting effects on Iraq's bureaucracy, with 7 million employees and salaries costing $4 billion per month. Despite the conflict and turmoil, people continued to receive their salaries. The U.S. occupation in Afghanistan and Iraq. After the Taliban resurfaced, the U.S. struggled in Afghanistan. The surge, initially planned for success, proved futile, and the U.S. found no peace partner in the Middle East. Corruption, economic downfall, and unsatisfactory governance contributed to the military crisis. The 30,000 troops sent to Afghanistan were met with skepticism. A decade-long struggle, it paralleled the Soviet Army's situation in Afghanistan in the 1980s. Ultimately, the U.S. learned that military victories do not ensure successful occupations, and it lacked reliable partners in the Middle East to achieve peace and democracy. The failure of NATO in Libya. The book explores the Arab Spring social uprising that began in Tunisia and spread to Egypt and Libya. It highlights the NATO's poorly crafted military campaign in Libya and the strategic mistakes made, which made the situation worse and vulnerable. By the end of 2014, the Libyan civil war had become a calamity, like the situation in Iraq and Syria, causing a sense of revisiting colonialism. U.S. policy and the Saudi conundrum. Following the 9/11 attacks, Al-Qaeda expanded its presence in Yemen where the Houthis, an enemy of both Al-Qaeda and Saudi Arabia, had been the Arabian Peninsula's strongest deterrent. However, since the US had to support its pivotal ally Saudi Arabia, it chose to support them in their anti-Houthi campaign. These campaigns were vicious and made Yemen spiral into chaos, alienating the Houthis from any peace process. As a result, the US policy faced a conundrum on how to support an enemy of al-Qaeda and Saudi Arabia simultaneously, which ultimately went astray. Syrian conflict overview. The Syrian civil war began in March 2011 with the Arab Spring movement. The opposition to Assad's regime quickly became divided along geographic, ethnic, and religious lines, which led to the rise of ISIS and al-Nusra. The involvement of neighboring countries further complicated the conflict. The opposition used chemical weapons to force US intervention, but foreign policy failed during the Geneva II peace talks, and Saudi Arabia's inability to help de-escalate the conflict worsened the situation. The violence and uncertainty continue to this day. The unstoppable force of ISIS. Iraq's political shambles paved the way for the rise of the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria, ISIS, led by Sunni militant Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi. Despite the belief that al-Qaeda had been defeated, ISIS emerged with popular support and went on to capture Mosul, establishing a caliphate that practiced brutal forms of Islam. The US aimed to eradicate ISIS, but the real short-term goal was containment. The fall of ISIS was driven not by US bombing but by internal factors such as corruption, bribery, and nepotism. ISIS's slow collapse is causing a refugee crisis and endless revenge in the Middle East, undermining any peace effort or attempt to redraw century-old maps.
Cockburn's examination of the Middle East's trajectory provides an essential understanding of how historical events, international interventions, and sectarian tensions have shaped the region's modern conflicts. The Age of Jihad leaves readers with a clear comprehension of the significance of past mistakes made by foreign powers in the Middle East, and the seemingly unstoppable force of chaos unleashed as a result. It emphasizes that the current situation in the Middle East has produced an unprecedented number of refugees and internally displaced people, highlighting that lasting peace and stability is nowhere near in sight, as the lure of endless revenge continues to undermine diplomatic efforts.